Namaste, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, very good. So I will repeat it on behalf of SSPD and then our brothers and sisters in BHPA, Western University of America, behind the Sapa who is here, Arunaji and all the others. We invite Dr. Raj Vedam as our first aachaara today for an initiative many of us have been trying to put in motion in SSP. So Dr. Raj Vedam, thank you. And please note that how difficult the initiative is, by the trouble we get to get back people here, even though they found it. So this has been a long-standing effort by Vasuji and myself and many others in the temple congregation, founders, who want to create a resource, audio, video, and textual resource, which relies only on truth of about Hinduism, about India, civilization, history, tradition, and knowledge. We don't want to go to Google. We would want them to come to SSVD resource for that, right? We want to change the paradigm that anybody can talk about anything, but we want to change it something only people like Raj Vedam can talk about, or only him, people like him. So that is the fundamental goal of this initiative. And across the last spring, when Raj Vedam ji was here on the auspices of a meeting by BHPA, and a couple of board members, Murli ji and others, Basu ji, got together with him, threw this idea to him, and he was very enthusiastic. He didn't know us. And by this time, you should be very skeptical about temples in US, right? He wasn't. He was very open-minded, and he was willing to come. And we are very thankful, and we'll make sure, even though the number of bodies here are fewer, the knowledge will spread. So why Dr. Raj Vedam? What is he, right? What makes him special? He is special. The reason is, if you go to any democratic, English-speaking Western democratic country, there are Indians in all kinds of positions, from doctors to solicitors to lawyers to criminals to criminal lawyers to all kinds of higher positions, right? So they are all very educated. Many of them have Hindu backgrounds, and many of them are very savvy with technology. Many of the CEOs and CTOs are Hindu Indians who have become Hindu Americans, even now here. But to have them speak about Hinduism is like shooting ourselves in our feet any given day and any given evening. But Raj Vedam is of different kind. He is from Mysore. He's a Tamil-speaking Kannadiga. That's what he declares himself. But he did his engineering, electrical engineering in Mysore University. Then he did his master's in Indian Institute of Science. And then he came to Oregon State University for his PhD in electrical engineering. But he didn't stop his learning. He specialized in automated design, electrical engineering, and all the other engineering things which I can't even explain because I'm a biologist. So I don't want to misspeak, right? But he specialized everything, but he didn't stop there. So he was not just another technocrat, desi background. He became a knowledge seeker, a truth seeker. So he went back to the original texts, original works on original texts by foreigners, by Indians, so-called Indiologists and real Indologists for over last 200 years. He inquired what is the true history, what is the evidence-based history, evidence-based narration for Indian history, knowledge, traditions, and everything else between those two spots. And he has spent almost 2 decades of research. Not only that, in Vedas, in our shastra, there are 3 types of people. One is a shaunaka, another is a charaka, third is a bana. Bana is one who goes and dramatically talks about different things, like banas. They are actors, they are this thing. Then shaunakas are pauranikas, who tell stories, right? But charakas know everything. They are scientists, they are researchers who go from village to village, temple to temple, kshetra to kshetra, and talk about the true science behind our shastras. So he fits to all 3 categories, and also is an engineer, right? So-called desi engineer. So with all his fantastic background, why is he doing this? Why is he here? We wanted him here, we requested him here because for last more than 2 decades, right? Almost 2 decades, he has traveled all over the world, in particular Western universe, and also in India, taught about Hinduism to Hindus, taught about India to Indian universities, and also India to here, giving revealing his expertise in archaeogenetics, archaeoastrology, archaeology, and how to look as an engineer the facts and teach the what is truth and what is not true. So engineer in him comes out when he describes India as a knowledge civilization. So that's very important. Like I said, he is an authentic person, a truth seeker, and also has become a truth speaker, which makes him a good acharya for our purpose. So Raj Vedamji, when you tell this to people who are here and people who are listening online, and also who are going to listen, because Vasu and I have been planning for this to archive and create a large resource with 101, 201, 301 kind of courses. When you do this, please bless us that this initiative expands further with our friends from VHPA and other organizations, and it will be a pivotal part of it. Vasu, did I say everything I need to say?
Correct. I would like Murali to also to speak a few words.
Great, yeah. So, and this could not have happened without SSBD's initiative and all.
How many
the help.
people are
So
there
really,
online?
please,
11.
and I also personally apologize for the delay. And I know. Thank you, sir.
I don't take much of your time, but I think it would be, he was here earlier back in spring, right? But yeah, and it amazes me, people like who is having a literary career and having such a bundle of knowledge in Vedic and Indian civilization, that's amazing. Always, Dr. Vedam, we invite you on behalf of the Board of Trustees officially to this program and to the chamber. I also welcome Mahendra Singh Sabaji and Arunaji and all other dignitaries and our congregation members for attending this seminar. And I think more than a dozen people are there online, but I hope we'll get more more people by the time you do your presentation. Thank you. Welcome again. Thank you.
Namaste, Namaskaram, everybody. So it's a real pleasure to come back to SSVT. I'd like to thank Arunaji, his first inviting me here, and that has triggered a sequence of actions over here where I come third visit to SSVT. And thanks to Vasuji, Gopalji, and Mahendraji and others. So thank you very much. So we talk about India and knowledge civilization, and this whole thing was triggered. This works. Stop working, so then I can do this. So we start Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. My thanks to all the gurus who come before us and to the present day teachers who are teaching us a lot. Sometimes people have asked, do you endorse everything by the people who are the last line over here? No, I don't. But then we take the things that are of values. They have done great contributions to help us. There are obviously things they say we don't agree with. So we had to take the good. Everybody see it. So to set the context, I'd like to show how India is presented in AP World History textbooks in Maryland. It's a real shame that there are not enough youth over here, because this is really aimed at the youth. This is the nonsense that your children and grandchildren are learning in the classrooms. And the whole goal of talking about these things was to empower them with the vocabulary, language, and knowledge so they can rebut some of these narratives. So to start with, this is the book. AMSCO Advanced AP World History from 1200 to present, and these are the people who are responsible for the mess that is there in the textbook. If you know any of them, please do write to them and express your outrage that they can write things of this nature. So just to start with, there are there's a chapter over here with 4 pages devoted to what they call as South Asia. So let's try to see what exactly are they talking about when they reference South Asia. So in that preface, they start with describing what they call Hinduism, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and others. But look at the language. First of all, the factual errors. They start with this Aryan invasion, people migrating to the south and things of this nature. It suggests that they brought with them the scriptures. So this is what they say. They brought with them scriptures called the Vedas. But this is a factual error right here, because even linguistic theories that talk about Aryan invasion They say the Vedas were composed in India. For example, Max Miller, who says Chandas period, Mantra period, and all those things, they say Vedas were composed in India. So even if you take the linguistic theory, which is proposed by leftist Marxist books, there's a factual error right here, saying that they brought the scriptures with them. So there are errors over here. Words like belief, the belief called Hinduism, right there trying to devalue it, that you are believing in something, that kind of a notion over here. Then over here, in the few lines that they have, what are they talking? Vedas thought people should organize society, sharply defined classes called caste, prohibited social mobility, kept society stratified. So they straight away gone into the oppressor-oppressed kind of narrative over here. Whereas talking about Zoroastrianism or Judaism, they use words like faith, they believe, other two faiths, and so on. So the point is, there's a respectful language when it comes to Abrahamic faiths, and there is a kind of a loose language when it comes to talking about Sanatana Dharma. And right there, imagine what a teen's mind and impressions that are made over here. So going forward, take a look at this. When they talk about social structures in South Asia, they reinforce several falsehoods. For example, arrival of Islam. Nobody knows that Islam arrived as tourists or as guests of us, that we invited them, or things of this nature. These were violent invasions and bloody invasions, savage invasions at that, on the Indian civilization. But the language obviously is softening Islam. And then they're talking about India's caste system, while obviously inequitable. What is obvious about it and what is inequitable about it? There's a presumption on their part that is already inequitable, and they're reinforcing that with adjectives to cloud your kids' minds, to make sure that your kid accepts that as if it's a wisdom. Put no there, don't question it. So obviously this way, this kind of a language. And they're talking about Muslim merchants and migrants. I cannot even imagine some of these things. And then they say that it lent stability to a politically decentralized land, flexible enough to accommodate newcomers. It does not, for example, saying obviously inequitable is demonization. It also does not explain the illogic of supposing an inequitable system giving rise to a prosperous, harmonious society, which is what India was, a prosperous, harmonious society for thousands of years. How can that be possible if you have a society that is supposedly, with an oppressed kind of dynamics and so on? So the third thing you see here is Muslim invaders are portrayed as migrants. So this is softening of Islam. Softening of Islam is a major undertaking today by the Islamo-leftist movement, where they try to soften the impact of Islam with language of this nature. That is going on. And going on, most of the people who try to escape the grip, look at the words used, the adjectives used, escape the grip, as if caste was whatever they call as caste, is some kind of a noose of people's necks and holding them in chains. Escape the grip failed. The low caste who converted Islam to improve the social did not achieve that goal. They don't explain why they did not achieve the goal. So there's a lot of illogic over here. Going on, they talk about women in South Asia, women in Hindu tradition are confined to separate social sphere. And Islamic women receive similar treatment. Look at the false equivalence over here. We know whichever society Islam is, wherever in the world, their women are relegated to third-class status. They're relegated to the back quarters and so on. Here they're trying to say, because India was like this, therefore even Muslims in India got similar treatment. Do you see what is going on over here? They are manufacturing a falsehood. Islamic women's status because of a similar Hindu women's status. False equivalence, it does not show cause and effect. In India, women went to a negative status because of Islam. It doesn't talk about it. So this is a recurrent theme throughout this book. I just try to call a few things. I can go line by line and call up issues, but I don't want to waste your time. I'm just showing you some of the issues over here. Going on, one more page that talk about Bhakti movement. And it seems especially appealing to many believers because it did not discriminate against women or people of low social status. Once again, there's a demonization referencing discrimination of women. Where is the discrimination of women in the Indian context? We have had women leaders going back to exceedingly ancient period of time, women rishikas and others we have had, and all kinds of leaders, whether they are military leaders, whether they are spiritual leaders, and so on. We have had women leaders all the time. Never have we had a situation like this, but they bring in these notions and low social status. So there is no evidence about poor women's status except after Islamic invasion of the north, where women had to hide away behind veils to avoid abduction or practice jihad or necrophilia, things of this nature. So they're saying once again, referencing to people called Bhaktis, though the Bhaktis were Hindus, the language is so horrendous over here. They were similar in some ways to Sufi Muslims. So once again, an equivalence made that Sufi Islam is the one that brought about the Bhakti movement and things of this nature. Again, a falsehood. Bhakti predates Islam by hundreds of years. For example, Andar in Tamil Nadu was a Bhakti saint, going back to God alone knows what the time period was. Some people say 300 current era, maybe much, much earlier. But the choice of words falsely positions equivalence with Islam, additionally softening Islam. I can go on, but just 4 pages, mind you, this is not throughout the book. Just in 4 pages, I'm getting all of these things. And so there are 4 pages to present India. We should expect we have a reasonable expectation that they'll present the best of India. What do you want to teach your children? These are American kids. Tomorrow they become the leaders who will perhaps do trade with India, they'll have some office interaction with India. You want the best knowledge of India to be given to kids. But instead, in these 4 pages, you're stuffing so much of negativism. What kind of interaction do these kids, American kids, have tomorrow with India? That's the question to ask. Are we equipping American kids to be competitive on a world stage with content like this? That is the question to ask. So we have a reasonable expectation, but what we see is a repeated attempt at demonization. Even in this multiple choice exercise, what do they select? They select a criticism by Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni is referencing to how the Indian scholars are snobbish. They think their knowledge is the best and so on and so forth. That is what they choose to highlight over here, the haughtiness and so on, rather than anything else they could have selected. They could have selected so many positive things in the multiple choice exercise, but this is what they choose to highlight. So again, the question, why do you highlight a negative? Is there nothing positive to share in India in these 4 pages? There's a clear attempt by textbook writers and editors to have a negative portrayal and demonization. I hope you as parents and the grandparents might observe these things and take whatever action needed to write to variant textbooks. The second question, again, they were chosen to highlight positives of India, but even here, you're seeing the obligatory reference to sati. There has got to be some negative representation, and there you have it. Stories from Vikrama about the legendary king over here, talking about sati over here. This is what you find over here. So is this what you want to stuff into a teen's mind about India? So you have 4 pages. You could have talked a lot about India, even if it's 1200 to present, but this is what is chosen. So the negative associations are strongly made and so on. So there is no context, editorial comments whatsoever of what a rare phenomenon it was, how it was selectively amplified by British. Clearly, there's indoctrination by writers. If anybody here wants to know about sati, please read the book by Meenakshi Jain. I strongly recommend that to read it. And what we're seeing is presentism is used here, to the curse of present-day history writing, where values of the present are imposed judgmentally on the past. This is what you're seeing repeatedly in these textbooks, only applied to India. So what we're seeing is in just 4 pages, I've shown you the demonization of Hindus, softening of Islam's savagery, false equivalences, errors, manufacture of fake factoids, erasure of facts, semantic distortion, deliberate negative portrayal to indoctrinate. Just 4 pages. AP world history. Are you guys shocked? I hope you understand the gravity of the situation. Your children are learning this. This is designed to make them reject their heritage. This is designed to make them reject and make others look down and on Hindus and so on. So it impacts the identity of Indian Americans and Hindus very, very negatively. That is the bottom line. So I have 2 sections that was designed for youth, and I hope youth will still see these recordings later on, but you as adults might not find it that interesting. But the first one, how do you stand your ground? When your textbooks in the class give you material like this, you probably squirm in the classroom, right? your peers are listening to you, to your teachers talking about India and your heritage in such a negative way, you probably feel very, very small in class. So what is your best reaction? You might say that, oh, I don't believe in all these things. I'm not a Hindu, I'm an atheist. These are the kind of responses you have. But there is a better response, and that better response is to stand your ground. How do you defend your identity? First of all, this whole notion that Hindus practice inhumane caste system, these are adjectives obligatorily used in textbooks. This is what you find all the time. And so the question is, what is the distortion and what is the reality? Is what we have, Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra, is that caste. So you're going to see that, and I'll try to help you navigate this whole thing. These are all the adjectives you see. Inhumane, caste, rigid hierarchy, discrimination. Whenever you see textbooks talking about Indian social order, this is what you'll typically find. And we'd like to see the origins of each of this. Inhumane, caste, hierarchy, discrimination. I'm going to show everyone and tell you how you can defend your cause. So where did all this start? All this started because the favorite of the Marxist and leftists is the Purusha Sukta. In Purusha Sukta, the 10th Mandela 90th hymn, we have got 11 and 12 verses over here, calling out attributions of creation. These are beautiful verses. Whole thing is talking about cosmos, the nature of the cosmos, nature of the creation. In the process of doing that, we have got two verses that talk to the divided Purusha. Purusha is a standard for Brahman. When you divide Purusha, how many portions did they make? What they call is mouth, arms, thigh, feet. The Brahman was his mouth. Arms were the Kshatriyas over here. Thighs became Vaishya. Feet, the Shudras are produced. Promptly, that became the reason why they said Hinduism endorses caste system. This is the main reason why the Marxists and leftists have convolutedly taken this Purusha Suktam out of Rig Veda and tried to say, here is the endorsement of caste system. But nowhere over here do we see any attempt to discriminate or inhumane or whatever adjectives they're using over here. But it is an expression of the cosmos. That is what we see. But this is the origin. We can see how the Europeans constructed caste. The classical Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra, that is the system we had, that is perverted into alien, immobile, hierarchical caste system. This is what they tell us, right? And we know caste is adopted from Portuguese casta. This is not even an Indian word. Accusations of oppression, discrimination, upper, lower, untouchable, everything results from this framework. And the roots of this goes to Aryan invasion theory using linguistics, where we have had an honorific called Arya. Arya means a noble person. For example, Dushasana is an Anarya because of his role in dislobing Draupadi. He's called an Anarya. So we had Arya always as an honorific, but that was perverted into a racial category, something called Aryans. We don't know what Aryans were. We have the word Arya, not Aryan, but this was imposed on us, saying as a racial category. Similarly, Dravida is a geographical identifier that is perverted into racial Dravidian, and caste was positioned as a racial construct of the Aryans through Purusha Suktam and others. This is the racial categorization with Dalits and other people on the outside and things of this nature. And Brahmins became evil in the missionary atrocity literature. I'll show you evidence of all of these things, but this is basically how the Europeans managed to pervert your identity, and they continue to pervert the identity of your kids and grandkids. That's what we're saying with them. So we know casta, the Portuguese casta became caste. This is the curse of the Europeans. And this whole thing goes back their own biblical literature. In the Old Testament, we are told that Noah cursed his son Ham because Ham saw his father in a drunken state, his nakedness, and so on and so forth. And therefore, he was cursed. He was the colored son, right? So the three sons of Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And Japheth was the originator of the white race, according to the Bible history. Ham, the Semitic race, the Judaic people, and so on. And Shem was the Semitic races. Ham was the colored races, Africans, perhaps the Indians, and everybody were from Ham. So according to them, Ham was a cursed son. This was a justification for slavery. In all of the West, 1800 years of Christianity and so on, slavery was justified basically because of this theory. The so-called, they wanted to maintain the bloodline purity. What they saw was when they went to the New World, North and South America, they saw that in the settlements, the white people were mixing with the native people. Plus, they've got Africans also as slaves, and they're mixing with them also. All these mixed races were coming over there. How would they know who's supposed to be the server, who's supposed to be the white person? The bloodline purity for Christianity was important. Yes, sir.
What is that first picture identifying? What is it?
This is a story in the Bible. In the Bible, it says Noah once was in a drunken fit. He fell drunk and so on. And his youngest son, Ham, saw his father's nakedness. And so he got up, Noah got up, and he cursed his son, Ham, saying that you will serve your other two sons. So you are basically like a slave. Your descendants will serve the other two sons. Other two sons were the originator of the white race, Semitic race, according to Bible's racial theory. And Ham was a black race and things like that. So this is the origin of slavery in the Bible's tradition. And so
Did the story come in Tanakh with the old Bible?
I'm not sure where exactly, but probably.
In Tanakh.
Probably, yes. It's the
It
Old
is in-
Testament.
It is in Old Testament,
Old-
and
yeah,
Ham's lineage is called
that
Canaan.
is called Tanakh. That is called-
Correct. And he is not supposed to be having connection with God.
Right. So all these mixed races that they saw in the New World, where the word caste was used, 16 racial groupings. And this was imposed on India. This is the curse of the Europeans that we bear even today, that they use their bigoted nations of race and Christian ideas to impose this notion of caste on us. What we're seeing is a manufacture of hierarchy. When they say upper, lower, we unquestioningly accept that, right? But it's such a big bogus put on you by the British literature itself. What we find, this book Shivasya Kulam by my good friend Sudha Mohan, he's showing Max Weber and others, they use this Brahmins as a reference. They saw all the aacharam practices, aacharam and shoucha practices were followed by different varnas. Different varnas had different aacharam practices, evolved over many, many generations. For example, the degree to which food and water touched by various castes accepted by others, extent to which barbers, washermen do service for them, length of period of pollution observed after birth and death, occupation by wearing and not wearing sacred thread, and so on. So they looked at Brahmins as a reference, put them as highest caste. If some of the Varna had different acharam and shoucha practices, lesser than them, they put them lower. They created the hierarchy, and they accuse us of having a hierarchy. Purusha Sutta never talked about hierarchy. It was an organization. The head can't function without the legs, right? So it was an organization of society which Rig Veda saw, a beautiful organization of society. Leftists and Marxists have perverted that, and the evidence is right over here. We had nothing called upper, lower, and things of that nature. That's clear what the British did. They created the hierarchy. So very important for you to understand this. And here's a sample text. You can go to Vajrasuchika Upanishad. Some people say Adi Shankara wrote this, some people say no, somebody else wrote this. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. These are encoding ideas of the Bharateeya civilization. So over here, he's asking, who is a Brahmin? Is he the self? What is he? And why is he important? And so on. He's saying Brahmin is not the jiva, not the body, not the birth, not because of knowledge, not because of karma that he has, not because of dharma that he's doing, because everybody's doing this. Every varna has got a jiva, every varna has got a body, every varna has a birth and so on, noble births. Every varna has got knowledge, especially the Kshatriyas and others. That's what they see over here. Every varna is accumulating karma. It is not even dharma. Everybody's practicing dharma. Then who is a Brahmin? He's saying he who's attained self-realization. There is no hierarchy, no privilege, only philosophical. What are you seeing here? We have evidence. I'm not just talking nonsense. I'm taking the British record and showing you how they created hierarchy. I'm showing you the Indian record and showing you philosophically there is no hierarchy. Absolutely no hierarchy. Going forward, this immobility, that's the next trope that I put on your kids, right? That the so-called caste system is hierarchical, immobile. Where did that immobile come from? We are seeing a fake factoid. Even if we take recent figures, I'm not even going to talk to you about Valmiki or about Vyasa. There's a lot of controversy either they were Brahmins, not Brahmins, so on. Leave them. We know that Valmiki had at some point in his life, he was a thief or a dacoit, and then he wrote some of the highest wisdom. Vyasa was born of a fisherwoman and a Brahmin father, but then we know that he also wrote the highest wisdom. We know all this. In our own times, recent times, Aryabhatta should be spelled with two T's or one T. That was a controversy. If he spelled with two T's, that becomes Bhatta. Bhatta is a Brahmin, and he had access to Jyotisha, highest wisdom, no problem with that. That's what leftists love. But if you read the book by William Clark, who was a Sanskrit professor at Harvard, 1930, he wrote a translation of Aryabhatta. In his preface, he's given about 5 pages of description why Aryabhatta should be spelled with one T and not with two T's. If it is one T, Bhatta, that means he's like a servant, not a servant, like a servant class. He's basically a servant class. Somebody who's in the servant class had the access to the highest wisdom, Jyotisha. Even today, our Panchangas are based on that. So clearly, we're seeing mobility over here. Peshwas, we know they were Brahmins. They adopted the aachaara of Kshatriyas. And they became Kshatriyas only because they adopted those practices, not Brahmin practices, aachaara of Kshatriyas. We know Saurashtra. In Saurashtra, there were weavers who would come to Tamil Nadu, Chola kingdom time, and they would do trading over there. Over time, they adopted the aacharam of Tamil Brahmins in Tamil Nadu, and today they're called Saurashtra Brahmins in Tamil Nadu, just by adopting aacharam practices. That's all. So if anyone wished to join a certain Varna, they would merely adopt those aacharam and practices. There is no police in India, no religious police in India saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. No such thing. Anybody could go anywhere they wanted. There's no upper, no lower. I just say, you can go across anywhere. You can go. It's like a matrix. No upper, no lower. Okay. So, who created the notion that Brahmins were evil? This started with this person, which is Abbe Dubio. I don't know how to pronounce the word. I think Dubio. Somebody who knows French would know better. But he wrote this work. He escaped the French Revolution.
Dubois. Usually pronounced Dubois. Yes.
Dubois. Okay. He escaped the French Revolution in France. If he was there, his head would have been cut off in the guillotine. But he hopped on a ship and landed in Tamil Nadu, where the French had colonies in Pondicherry, and he was an anthropologist. He was also a missionary. He tried his best to convert the southern Indians. He found that everybody respects a Brahmin, and they go to the Brahmin for advice, and he said, don't convert. And so he saw Brahmins were the impediment for conversion. So he wrote the state of Christianity in India. He's written these things. As a Hindu, a Brahmin must be considered as a kind of moral monster, an individual placed in a state of continual variance and opposition to the rest of the human race. This is the kind of anger he's had. Education of a Brahmin is universal hatred, content towards all human race. A Brahmin is thought, if not positively to hate his friends, return evil for good, conduct his life by selfish considerations, sacrifice everybody without exception to his private interests, and so on. A Brahmin is obliged from duty to be selfish, intolerant, proud, insolent, forbidden. So these are the kind of ideas which he brought about, because he saw he could not convert Indians because of the Brahmins. They were the moral leaders that people looked up to. So he named them evil. And the missionaries loved it. After that, the equation Brahmins equal to evil has continued till present day in the textbooks in the United States or in India. We have this, thanks to this evil person who brought this about in 1823. So I'm showing you historical origins of these narratives to empower you. So I've shown you this notion of caste, where it came from, what these hierarchy, what is immobility, all these things are. I'm showing you historical evidence where it started and the source for these, so that you know yourself how your identity has been destroyed by these people. Herbert Risley, he was the one who constructed the notion of caste over here. He was a census commissioner in India. He used a discredited race science. He used the ratio of width and height of the nose, the width, height of the nose. He said that can determine your race. He saw so many races in India, all is a different color, all these are races. He entrenched the notion of Aryan as a race. He entrenched the notion of caste, the census of 1901. He created 2,378 castes, tribes, and subcastes based on what he's doing, because he had taken the Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra into a total mess into one something called caste, and he had done this. He ordered them by social preference. Where did that come from? Aacharam, shoucha practices. That became a social preference. Ordering upper, lower, all those kind of things came. He institutionalized the notion of a caste, And we have unfortunately inherited this to the present day. All the distortions we see in India today is because of this. None of us have anything called caste. There is no sanction in any Dharma Shastra for caste. We only have Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra. That's all. No upper, no lower, no discrimination, nothing is there. We are all Brahman. That's the philosophical idea of this civilization. So this is all the nonsense. They engineered this, and we are saddled with this distortion today. Very, very unfortunately. Politically, we are saddled with it, and so on. The next big thing, untouchability. Untouchability, they say, is a unique practice of Hindus, where outside of the Varna system, you have these people, they don't touch Dalits and so on. But this is not true. We find in all parts of the world, we find a phenomenon of untouchability. India alone is singled out thanks to historic smearing. In China, the Thanka people, in Europe, Romani people, or the Cagots, or the other people, the Gong farmers over here. In India, what they call Dalit. In Japan, Korea, Nigeria, Somalia, Tibet, Yemen, any part of the world you go, there are people who dealt with night soil and so on, and they were kept at a distance. So this is what we see, because that was the state of sanitation. In thousands of years ago, that was how sanitation was. It's an unfortunate reality, but that's how it is. But India singled out because of this. You can read the article by Sahana Singh. Why is the world so obsessed with India's caste system and India facts? That will tell you a lot more about these Gong farmers and others in Europe. And the irony is, even as Europe, Britain had these kind of practices in their own society, they were happily inventing that Indians practice untouchable. When they themselves had the class structures doing this. That is the hypocrisy of that those people. So summary, in the European construction of caste, accusations obligatorily hurled at Hindus are oppression, discrimination. I'm going to show this in the next few slides. I've not addressed this yet. Immobility, immobile caste system. We showed how this is false. There is no such thing. There's always, you just adopt the aachaara and shoucha practices, and you become that varna. Hierarchy, this is also manufactured just by ordering them. Untouchable, worldwide phenomenon. Brahmins equal to evil. We saw the missionary manufacture of this particular aspect. So, anybody have any questions until now?
So, Dr. Vedam, so just want to inform you that 30 people in Zoom today now.
Wonderful.
Yeah, certainly some people, many people listening, it's being recorded as well. So.
Excellent.
They are coming from all over the US because we reached out to wider audience.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Thank you.
I have one question about.
Yes, please go ahead.
Why were people not allowed inside temples?
Okay, there's a question over here where why were people not allowed in the temples? Some people.
One second, okay? I'm sorry. Go ahead. What is the question?
The question was, why were some people not allowed to temples? But I'm going to answer that question in just a few minutes, the next few slides, because that comes under the heading of discrimination of oppression. That has got to have a detailed understanding. So I'm going to go a little more deeper. So please bear with me. In just a few minutes, I'm going to talk about this. So we saw the European construction where the Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra has been perverted into the alien, immobile, hierarchical caste system. All these accusations are from this framework. So I'm saying we need a 360-degree investigation. We must have a top-down view. What does the tradition say about this? We have seen some part of it. What about the bottom-up view, the practitioner who's experiencing this? This is a subaltern view. What does he say about it, he or she? And we also need a historical view to bridge the top down and bottom. I'm an engineer, that's what I do. I look at it from all sides. Right? So you will see the aspirational view, you see the bottom up view, the experiences view, and we bridge it with the historical, with the facts and evidence. So the top down view, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, we have varnas are determined by the gunas of the person. Gunas are the disposition, what your satvika, rajasic, or tamasika guna. And these are not fixed, by the way. Things we keep changing through these gunas, even in the course of the day. We have a civilization that's got Mahavakyas, things like Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, Jnanam Brahma, and so on. Very, very noble ideals are there in India. So we are seeing the top down is an aspirational model. We don't measure up to it. We don't measure up to it, but those are the goals of a civilization. That is where a civilization is saying, go there. That is where you need to go. Do we succeed? Many of us fail, obviously, but that is the goal for our civilization. Our goal is to remove avidya because we are deeply in ignorance. We have to remove avidya so we are able to accomplish some of those goals. And we are seeing that I already showed you aachaara and shoucha, they facilitate varna mobility. If you take the bottom-up view, it is primarily a conflict model. What does that mean? The socialists, the Marxists believe that all of history is a history of class conflicts. That's all there is to it, where one class is fighting another class. Karl Marx, the person who started this, right? So he lived at a time when Europe was industrializing. He saw how the factory owners were discriminating against the worker class. So he believed one fine day worker class will uprise and kill off all its rich people. It will be a classless society. So he believed all of history is the history of class conflicts. Our Nehruvian socialists believe in the same thing. Karl Marx wanted a bloody revolution. Our socialists believe through the constitution we can bring in laws to kill the old order and we can bring a classless utopian society. That's the only difference. But both of them believe in a conflict model. This uses the colonial received wisdom of immobile, hierarchical caste system, evil Brahmins. This is unquestioningly taken in the conflict model. It refuses to acknowledge the mobility or the philosophical base. Gone is your Vedanta, gone is your Mahavakyas. Nobody cares about it. It's all conflict model. That's all that matters. In practice, we see British ethnocide created poverty, caste, destruction of livelihoods, and this distorted India quite a bit. We are seeing Marxist, socialist, leftist nexus. They uphold the conflict model. Many works are there. So the top-down is aspirational, bottom-up conflict model. That's what we're seeing here. I'd like to talk to you about the historic view. And I want to present an angle that is very little known, but I've been talking about this for the last 1 year or so. I hope you'll appreciate what I'm saying here. I'd like to start with the story from Yoga Vasishta. Yoga Vasishta is a work that talks about how young Rama was taught by the rishis, Vishwamitra and Vasishta. That is the topic on it here. In this story, there is a monster called Karkati. So Karkati had an insatiable appetite. She would consume everybody in Jambudvipa without any discrimination, keep eating, till she got so fed up with her own appetite, she goes to create a Brahma and has praised Tapasya for a boon. Brahma asks, what do you want? She wants to become a pinhead-like entity. So small, he says a suchi, basically she's a suchi, which is a pinhead, seen by the reflected light. And she wants to enter humans through their nostrils, ears, and eyes and infect their heart. She wants to consume them from inside. That's what she wants. And not just that. She wants to only consume humans who do not follow Dharma Shastras, who are intemperate, given to drinking, who are gluttonous, who eat at untimely times, they dwell in unhygienic places. Those are the people she wants to attack. Even a fool will tell you that the story is encoding the germ theory. It is saying that microscopic entities that enter through the nose, eyes, and so on, causing ill health in people, especially people given to not normal diet, not normal way of living. They are the ones affected. That is what we see over here. So it is showing ancient encoding of prudent diet, hygiene, good mental, physical health. And rishis had deep knowledge of processes that cause ill health. And why not? India has always been in the tropical zone. Every time monsoon comes, you've got cholera, dysentery, malaria, smallpox. Year after year will come, epidemics will be wiping out villages. Do you think our rishis will be quiet? They would think, what are the processes that cause this? Our rishis are scientists, and they have clearly found it, and they've encoded it into this kind of a story, and they've shown even the likelihood of disease transmission and so on. Why am I presenting the story of Karkati? Very important. Starting from some ancient time, I'm not even going to tell you the age of Rama, I'm not going there. Some ancient time, we've had this story. But if you come to even more recent time, we have British evidence from 1767 that inoculation was practiced in ancient India. For example, it says there's practice in Hindustan where a tribe of Brahmins, they divide them into small parties of 3 or 4, plan their traveling circuits to arrive at destination some weeks before the usual return of disease. Typically, disease comes at monsoon time in India, and you have Brahmins who are planning, so the disease is going to come. They're dividing them into small parties to go to different towns, villages, and practice inoculation. That's what we see in this British record over here.
Then Rampal also points out, right?
Yes. And one more from Asiatic Journal in 1819. This man is saying Vaidya Shastras, inoculation of smallpox known to the Hindu medical writers, it's called Sachita Kantam, known to Dhanvantari. He's saying there are 9 species of smallpox, 3 are declared incurable, and the author proceeds to lay down the rules for the rest of them, how we can cure the remaining of them. And one more, he's talking about this particular verse, taking the fluid from the pork or the udder of a cow or from a human subject and mix it with fluid in the blood, fever or smallpox is produced. And he's saying once it's inoculated, there's no fear of smallpox as long as life endures. You'll have a fever for 1, 2, or 3 days and some swelling, and it is gone in 2 or 3 days. That is what he's saying in 1890. So Indians practiced both variolation and inoculation. That is the bottom line over here. One more paper, 1827, that is saying Odisha now, you're seeing that on a certain day, Thursday or Sunday, 200 to 400 people are assembled and they're all given a cut in their arms instrument and they're cured. I've given you 3 historical instances where British are saying Indians practiced inoculation. I've also given you a story from Karkati, from Yoga Vashishta, that is saying that in ancient period of time, Indians already knew germ theory. They already knew that. And so we know that the British banned Indian inoculation in 1865. That is why today you don't find vaidyas going around different towns and so on and practicing this anymore, because British came. Once Jenner copied all these things, then they had their own vaccination. This whole thing was gone in India since then. So what is the observation? The British records are indicating Brahmins conducted inoculations. This does not fit the conflict model. Conflict model is one of discrimination, right? Oppression, discrimination, untouchable, things of that nature. This does not fit it. Brahmins thought students of all jatis, according to Dharma. This does not fit the conflict model. Vedanta view of Varna, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi. These are not only for Brahmin. These are for every cosmos, any creation, whether it's a rock, whether it's an animal, tree, everybody was part of Brahman. That's how it was seen. That does not fit the conflict model. Historic personalities, Aryabhatta, Saurashtra Brahmins, Peshwas, they show mobility across the spectrum, does not fit the conflict model. This aachaara and shoucha practice define mobility in practice. This also does not fit the conflict model. So we are seeing several instances are there that do not fit the conflict model. And I've also brought into you this public health idea. That is a public health issue over here. Evidence of that goes all the way to Sushruta Samhita itself. Sushruta Samhita is talking about epidemics. He's saying sometimes a city of depopulated by curse, anger, sin, or a monster, demoness, Karkati. Karkati is what he's talking about over here. Sometimes pollen of poisonous flowers and grasses wafted by winds invade a town or village, produce epidemic cough, asthma, and other fever, and so on. And he's saying the best safeguard is don't use the defiled water, vegetables, the epidemic breaks out in the country, migrate to a healthier, unaffected locality, and so on. So bottom line, even in Sushruta Samhita, we got evidence that epidemics were known. It's not something I'm conjuring up. Evidence is there. We have evidence in different parts over here. We also have cultural practices that have encoded public hygiene, right? Health awareness. For example, some parts of India celebrate Basoda, especially in northern India. Where it's cooler, you have sharply defined winter and summer. So Basoda is the last day. It's also in honor of Shitala Mata, again, the goddess who saves from diseases. It's the last day of the season when you can eat yesterday's food. After that, you should no longer eat yesterday's food because summer is started. We don't have refrigeration in India, right? In summer, morning's food will get spoiled by evening. You shouldn't eat that. In winter months, it's okay. Yesterday's food you can eat even today. So Basoda marks the last day when you can get very, very interesting to see these cultural practices that are encoding health, public health ideas. That is what I'm pointing out to you in these various things over here. Then we have the model that I'm presenting is public health instead of oppression. In medieval India, kings invited Brahmins to settle their kingdoms with grants of villages. This is, for example, in Tamil Nadu, where you have copper plates that are showing grants given to Brahmins to come and settle. It is not only in Tamil Nadu. Every part of India, kings are asking Brahmins to come and settle in their kingdoms. Why? Why were they doing that? Because they knew that as soon as a Brahmin comes, he establishes Agraharam, where here is a village temple or so on. And around that, through Vastu Shastra, different communities we put. They say that the weavers live here, ironsmiths live here, Kshatriyas live here, Brahmins live here, and promptly the leftists say oppression, discrimination, that you cannot live here, you cannot go there, and those kinds of things. But what I'm saying is there is a clear understanding of occupational biohazards. For example, the weaver, it is not like modern factories where you have excellent air conditioning and air filtration and so on. They work in dinky rooms, small rooms, where he's got a room or a couple of rooms. He, his son, and everybody's doing that. They are breathing cotton fibers day in and day out. He's got asthma, he's got TB, tuberculosis, he's got pneumonia, he's got all kinds of things. He might get some immunity to it. His kids get immunity, his wife gets immunity, his community gets immunity, but others don't have. If you're a ironsmith or goldsmith, the same things. You're breathing metal fumes day in and day out in your workshop. You're breathing that. You've got respiratory issues. Others don't have immunity, but you might get that. If you're a farmer, you're working with soil, right? Corona complexes. You get some immunity. Others don't have immunity. Same thing with a butcher. You have E. coli and other things in your workshop. Every day you're chopping meat and so on and so forth. You have some immunity. Others don't have. Our ancients understood that. I'm claiming that because of the story in Karkati, because of other things. Indians understood the germ theory. Indians understood epidemics. Indians understood the importance of public health and the requirement that they should be isolated. These communities must live separately. That was the Vastu Shastra was based on public health ideas and not on discrimination or oppression ideas. Today, we have the benefit of great medical advances where anybody can live anywhere. Even if you get COVID, no big deal, you can take care of things with nature. Ancient days, they had to use just about everything they knew to prevent the spread of disease. And this is one of them. So the question is, can an oppressive society be so cohesive, tension-free, prosperous over thousands of years? This is a work by Angus Madison, where it shows India had the highest of the world GDP in the year 2000 years ago. I showed it over here, 33%, falling by 10% over 1,000 years. And when the British came, boom, it's gone down. Right? It's a linear graph, and new India is right over here. So the question is, can India have been so cohesive if we were a discriminatory society, if we were an oppressive society? How on earth would you get people to do what you want to do? Right? If you had a whip and you are chaining them to the whip and beating them, it's not going to happen. It's got to be some kind of a cohesive, tension-free society. That is where the prosperity came. This is the common sense staring at us, but we rarely take these facts. So I am proposing a model of public health instead of oppression. Classic Vastu-based town planning separating the jatis reflects understanding of unique occupational biohazards of each community and separation for public health. In all of these people I talked about, who's the person with the least immunity? It is the Brahmin. The Brahmin is a fellow who's waking up early in the morning, having a ritual bath and doing Gayatri Japam and reading the Vedas all through the day, eating very, very simple foods, not much physical activity. He's got the least immunity. Therefore, the shoucha practices on him are the highest. Dharma Shastras would say, if you come in contact with this fellow, you have one bath. If you come in contact with this fellow, you take 2 baths. And things of this nature came about with an understanding of public health. Because the Brahmin is important for society. He is the fellow who is bringing prosperity to that small village because he is the one who's teaching all the occupations, right? Dharampal is saying the Brahmin is teaching everybody. Why is that important? I omitted to say that in a few slides back, but what I wanted to show was the prosperity of India was high in the past. The question is, who was prosperous? Was a Brahmin prosperous? Was a Kshatriya prosperous? It was the artisan class. Artisan class was making every item of value for the Indian Bharathiya civilization, right? Every item of value was made by the artisans, so-called Shudras. So they were the ones who were basically propping up the economy to that kind of a height. And how could they produce goods of value, especially trading with Indo-Roman trade or Silk Road and things of that nature, if they did not have an education? If you do not know that the Chinese gold coin perhaps is 5 grams versus the Greek drachma or whatever is perhaps 7 or 8 grams. If you did not know the ratio of those things, how would you know the true value of the gold coin? How would you do trade in the Silk Road? How would you do trade on the Indo-Roman trade if you did not know ratios? If you did not know that maybe the monsoon is going to come 5 months from today, I'm a weaver. So I should know how many bolts of cotton can I make, muslin can I make, ready so that when the Yamuna ships come, I can sell it to them. If I don't have those things ready, they'll go to the next port and buy it from the next port. So I should know how much of cotton to buy. I should know how many looms I have. I should know how much of time it will take to make that. All that is mathematics. So that is why we needed an educated workforce. Just like today, you need a literate, educated workforce if you want your company to be prosperous. Same thing goes to India too. India too, in those days was educated, prosperous because of education. Who brought it about? Pathshalas, Dharma is saying the Brahmins. So Brahmins are critically important. That is why we're seeing all of these things, that Brahmins are very important for society. That is why you have strictest shoucha practices for them. And the aachaara shoucha practice about to enforce hygiene, the public health. I've shown you evidence in Yoga Vashishta. I can talk to you about Raj Vedam community. Colonial records on inoculation. You've had a prosperous society, no conflict society, cohesive, all the demolishing the trope of oppressive society. And my model of this public health as a driver of shoucha practices is a far better evidence-based fit than the conflict model of oppression and discrimination that has been got by discredited racial theories. Just want to internalize it. This has been screamed at you for the last 50 years, 70 years, 100 years. They've all internalized this. But these are all based on Christian ideas. These are all based on racial theories, linguistic ideas, all discredited works. We have got evidence showing how these practices evolve. All of you know during COVID time, somebody sneezes, you run for cover, right? So this is the kind of social distancing we had. We know that. Just project that into the past. And you see this is what the reality was for civilization. Okay, so the evidence is there all over the place. I'm just going to bore you with a few more details. Al-Biruni, he's saying in 1030 current era that they call the foreigners this lika, this impure, forbid to have any connection with them, intermarriage, relationships, sitting, eating, drinking with them, all will be polluted. Consider them as impure. They touch fire, water of a foreigner. So basically, that is how Indians were. They treated anybody from outside. I don't know who you are. I know my jatis. I know my varna. My dharma shastra is saying how to deal with that. But you are a foreigner. I have no idea. I'm just going to say you're impure. I'm not going to touch you. You're untouchable. That's how they treated them. Al-Biruni is saying that. And there are different works are talking about how there is mobility across the varnas. I'm not going to talk about that. I'll just skip this. There's mobility, for example, Arthashastra is talking about the sons of Brahmin, Kshatriya, the same Varna's father, another work in Mahabharata, another Manava Dharma Shastra, even Shudras can become Brahmins and so on. So basically, we are seeing aachaara, shoucha facilitated Varna mobility. So we are clearly seeing there's no discrimination, but there's public health awareness. If you think of public health awareness, every piece of the puzzle fits perfectly. Everything fits perfectly with no discordance. If you take oppression as a view, then we were the world's greatest hypocritical society, talking about Vedanta on one side and practicing oppression and discrimination on the other side. So we were a bunch of hypocrites. Our ancestors are hypocrites, we are hypocrites. Is that the reality? Over thousands and thousands of years, nobody questioned that. So if you take public health, if that's the paradigm that you apply over here, everything fits into place right over there. You asked, why would some people not enter temples and so on? I'm positing the same idea over here. And for example, the so-called untouchables, right? They handled people of all the jatis, all the varnas, whether it was carrying the dead bodies, carrying the night soil, and so on. They were exposed to the maximum pathogens, and therefore nobody had that kind of immunity. So they were required to live a little far away from the village, use different things, and so on. It's not discrimination over here. It is clearly an understanding of public health and the early society's way of dealing with public hygiene. That's what it is. And we have often said that 7 generations is when you wait for, if you adopt the aachaara and shoucha practices of a certain varna, it takes 7 generations. There is some evidence today from epigenomics on transgenerational genetic effects that basically saying that, for example, your toxic chemical exposure may harm your great-great-grandchildren up to 7 generations. So this idea is present even in literature today, but this is encoded empirically by our rishis who talked about 7 generations needed before something happens. So section summary, I talked to you how Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra is converted into a rigid caste system. A mobile system is falsely represented as immobile. Upper and lower hierarchy is manufactured by colonial anthropologists. Evil Brahmin hatred was institutionalized by missionaries. Public health-based distancing is positioned as discriminatory. Isolation of people with hazardous occupations positioned as discriminatory and oppressive. untouchable phenomena seen worldwide, including in British society, but only sensationalized in India through bigotry. Oppressed victimhood, socialist, leftist, Marxist ideological narrative are institutionalizing these distortions in today's textbooks. This is where we are. Any questions on this so far? This is really aimed at youth to give them a language to talk. So I really, really hope that they will internalize this by looking at this. Yes, sir.
One question, I think so, but you can't deny that there are some oppression, things going on also. People were, there are many, just for stories, and also people have written that there are some, lower classes are treated with the discrimination.
You use the word lower.
Yes.
I position there's no such thing as lower. So all these ideas have been put into us by Marxist writers and others who have been talking about this. Take the work of any saint, Bhakti saint in India. Do you see them talking about Jati mobility rather than any other kind of thing? Even take
Kanakadasaru says Kula Kula Vindu Hodadada Bedi. So no, there is
he's talking about Kulam there. Kulam.
Yes.
Kulam is not Varna, is not Jati, it is not the so-called caste. So this has been perverted by Marxist writers into as if it is caste discrimination.
But you can't deny that there was some discrimination. Even Kanakadasa was not, allowed to go to the temple at that time.
Why? Again, why? Question is why? I try to show you public hygiene and so on. Yes, sir, there are many, many instances where people are pointing out these things, but the paradigm and the lens, the drishti with which they are seeing is discrimination, oppression, and these kind of things. I am asking to move away from that and see through the prism of public health. Everything makes perfect sense. Was there chauvinism based on Kulam? Yes, there could have been. We know the Cholas had whether Shiva or Vishnu should be worshipped and so on. Not always, a little bit in one particular ruler's time. This kind of chauvinism was there. Some Kuladevam is better than some other Kuladevam. Yes, it's possible. And if some people want some more priority at a village fair than some other people, yes, that is possible. The last 100 years have seen enormous distortion. So today you see people in Bihar and others, landed people who are trying to discriminate against the so-called lower classes people. This is all based on bigoted, distorted ideas of what it is to be a Hindu and so on. So these are more of economical, local issues that have been conflated, but mapped as Hindu.
I understand, the narrative, you're changing narrative, that's great. But you can't deny that there's bad behavior at so many places in history. So we can't watch
It's a false equivalence. If you're saying that there's a local skirmish somewhere, yes, that's a statistical reality of a human society. Even within a family, a brother and sister may not be able to get along. Two brothers may not be able to get along. So there's a statistical reality of who we are as a people. The question is, where is that narrative getting embedded into? Where is that narrative of this so-called tension or problem that is ultimately being mapped into Sanatana Dharma? And I'm questioning that and saying nonsense, utter nonsense. So one has got to be very careful. If there is some, like Baswana, to talk about Baswana's vachanas over here, Kannada, because you know Kannada. So there also he's talking about Kulam. If you talk about Kabir, he's talking about religious rivalry now, Islam and others. So you're seeing that different people talked about different problems, tensions that existed, does not in any way go against what I'm saying over here. Over the last 200 years, distortions have happened. To the present day, yes, we have got problems. We've got many, many problems because people have internalized that Brahmin is more superior, Kshatriya, and this is nonsense. We never had this in India. Brahmin was a beggar all the time. You're supposed to be a beggar, right? That is the reality. He was supposed to live on alms, simple living. If you have too much of money, then you're going to spend it on wine and that and this, and where are you going to remember the Vedas and this?
I think it is like Arya and Javid, because Javid is never, lower and upper.
Never.
Shankaracharya also called himself as a Javid. So something like that.
Yes. You have to be very, very careful. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Vedam, it's really very eye-opening and enlightening lecture that I have heard.
It's not over, sir. It's not over. It's starting.
I think along the line, I think it's mainly out of ignorance. Like, I mean, we are not educated people. Still, we don't know how this system evolved.
Right.
And giving you my own upbringing. I come from a privileged class. There we consider privileged class coming from a village. We are a farming family. We had about 100 acres land. Of course, if you have like you have a grandmother, I mean, the village, everybody else was for you. We had about, people working on our farm. And there are people, washing our clothes, cutting our hair. And different roles they are playing in the society. But like he was saying, I think, we abuse the system.
So I'll stop.
Can you
there, I'll
repeat,
stop
can you
there.
repeat the question for
So
people
the
here?
issue was, there's a gentleman in the audience who's saying that they had a very privileged upbringing and a lot of landed people, and there are a lot of people working for them in different occupations and so on. And perhaps there was some way that they treated them that can be construed as this kind of an oppression and discrimination and so on.
It was happening all over India.
It's happening all over India. So, like I said, over the last 100 years, we have mapped a lot of these perversions on ourselves. We have mapped these perversions on ourselves. Please think about it. Our identity and notion is not the classical identity that I'm talking about. It is what the British have constructed for us.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We
And
abuse
we
the
are
system.
brainwashed.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Our
yes,
brainwash, we
yes.
are brainwashed.
Very true. And as far as the Jatis are concerned, I'll give you an example that I was talking with a friend who conducted his daughter's wedding in a class 3 city in India. And he's saying how different Jatis would be honored. For example, when the fellow was doing another Swarma come, he would be honored with some kind of a thing. The cook would be honored. Somebody else. Everybody's got their time and place where they're honored. Nobody's upward and downward. Everybody's honored at a certain time. So this is the evidence that we're seeing everywhere. So Jatis, yes, they practice their Jatis, what were they supposed to do, they practice. And if you're unhappy, yes, just like today you're unhappy with the workers thing, you'll yell at him. Maybe in the past also, yes, you yell at somebody. Very much could have.
No, I think so. You're absolutely right, because only 200 years back, our GDP, was about 24%.
Right.
And after British left our country, it came down to 1%.
All that perversion. That's what's happening.
1%.
Yes.
I mean, it's so sad, they destroyed our culture.
Very true.
They took away our language.
So what I say in my talks is, if you have been living life over here and circumstances take you over here, you're going to have serious psychological problems because you're used to this lifetime over here. And now we talk about multiple generations where to live here.
Yeah.
All kind of distortions will happen here.
Yeah.
All kind of insular behavior will happen here. Here is where you'll find comfort in your jati. Here is where you'll find strength in your jati. You see what I'm saying? This is all kinds of perversions happen here. So that's why I'm saying over the last 100 years, we have mapped many perversions to ourselves. Deconstruct the minds.
I'm so glad things are changing now.
Right.
Because I've been in this country for 50 years. I have a better perspective of life in India and life here in this country. And if things are changing, it's a silent revolution right now.
It is.
And the people coming, I come from Telangana. And so many people from Telangana, they are coming here. In fact, you'll see even some of these towns here, they're full of people from Telangana.
Absolutely.
What's happening right now is, it used to be, I come from, I mean, we used to marry in the same, same caste, but now that's changing. People marrying from north, south, east to west, and then from the different. Socio-economic.
Change the reality.
It's changing drastically. The silent revolution.
In my family also, I have
This is a very positive story. I think you're talking about Reddy and Kama intermingling, I guess.
So even in this country, the nonsense we brought from India was, to solve in this country. It was Telugu Association of North America, Tana. That was the first association started. Then some of the people who are other caste readies, they wanted to be in the power. And they formed another American Telugu Association. So they under
Feminism
we
on
brought
this
that
place
nonsense. We
yes.
brought that nonsense to this
Can
country.
I comment to?
We will have to get back on track.
Yeah,
Quite a
no,
bit.
I have to apologize.
I'll add that later.
We, as a temple organizers, we started a little bit late because of the noise and the sound of some religious events which we didn't count in. So definitely will be available 2 more hours after everything ends. And we are not taking a bio break, but you are free to walk in and walk out. Sorry.
That's exactly what I
Because the reason is we are waiting for lunch. Whenever he says, So,
Around 12:30, around 12:30, that good.
There's a water bottle there, I can go get just outside the door, I can get you. Other than that, please feel free to go in and go out. Because we don't want to lose the online audience too. And please save your questions, write it down. Because this is exactly what we want. This is not an end, this is the beginning of inciting such conversation. So please save your thought and please, whether you want a tea or something.
I'd love a tea.
How much sugar you like?
No,
I'll get you, please continue.
So, Raj Vedam, can you plan for breaking for lunch 12:30 because online we have to make sure that we are in sync with the online audience. So we'll break for lunch at 12:30.
Break, 5
okay,
minutes break, I see.
So 1 second, we'll break for lunch at 12:30 and then we'll come back at 1
let me
o'clock.
finish. The next section is very small.
Okay,
So we'll
Okay,
finish
sounds
at
good.
12:30.
Let's continue.
Will you say 30 minutes for lunch or 45 minutes?
No, 30 minutes is
30
stop.
minutes.
30 minutes stop.
30 minutes. So for the online audience, I will do the next section and we'll stop in about 15 minutes from now and reconvene half an hour later. So please
Perfect.
don't go away. A lot of important things are there.
So I will drive Dr. Vedam with a cup of tea, forgive me if I don't get for others.
So the next big thing that impacts our students is they're made to feel small in classrooms because the divinities that modern Hinduism has got a lot of Saguna Brahman worship, right? So they're made to feel very, very small. They ask you worship monkeys, elephants, millions of dollars. So this clearly makes our students feel small. This clearly makes our students apologetic. This clearly makes our students want to say, I don't believe in any of this, I'm an atheist. So the distancing from their culture starts over there because parents are unable to explain this and they don't know why this is going on. And clearly they're positioning Abrahamic systems as superior to Sanatana Dharma ideas. So how do you even empower yourself with a dialogue over here? So let me quickly talk about that. So let me go to 3000 BCE. I'm going to talk to you about a rishi called Yajnavalkya. So Yajnavalkya, why am I putting you 3000 BC? You have to see my other talks where I'm typing why he's placed over there. So it is showing the wisdom of our ancestors. They saw one Brahman with many manifestations. So there is this person, son of Sakala, who's challenging Yajnavalkya. How many gods are there, Yajnavalkya? And Yajnavalkya is saying 303, 3003. That is 3333. That many gods. Again, he says, how many gods are there, Yajnavalkya? He's saying there are 33 gods. How many gods are there? 6. How many gods are there, Yajnavalkya? 3. How many gods are there? 2. How many gods are there? 1.5. How many gods are there? 1. So it comes down to 1 eventually. This is a philosophical discourse that is hiding a lot over here. In the further lines in this definition, he's explaining what are these divinities he's referencing to. He's referencing different attributes of the cosmos. Different attributes of cosmos is what is being referenced in Samkhya philosophy over here. That is what we are seeing Rishi Yajnavalkya talk over here. Eventually coming to 1. And what is that 1? So, which is that one God? He's saying it is Brahman, that, thou art that. That is what he's referencing to. So we are seeing over here 2 things, Saguna Brahman and Nirguna Brahman. Nirguna Brahman means formless Brahman. Saguna means with a form, Brahman with a form. So we are seeing both aspects of that. Even in Yajnavalkya's time, going to 3000 BC, we are seeing that. So what does that even mean? Second instance, proof I'm giving you is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sorry, Bhagavad Gita.
It goes with Yajnavalkya very
Very interesting. Yes, yes. So there is this in Bhagavad Gita, clearly everybody knows about Vishwarupam, right? So Vishwarupam is now talking about how Bhagavan Krishna is telling Arjuna can't see Krishna in the divine form. He gives him the divine eye first, because he then only can see the entire electromagnetic spectrum. I am engineer, right? I love the electromagnetic spectrum. So we have narrow visual range only. If you want to see divinity in every aspect of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is what Brahman is. Brahman is all creation. That's what Krishna gives him. He gives him the divine eye that allows him to see every frequency in the electromagnetic spectrum over here. And he's saying all the divinities. You can see the divinities over here. He's saying Shiva, he's saying Ganapati, he's saying Hanuman, he's saying everybody is embedded inside Bhagavan. So once again, we are seeing every divinity merges into Narayana, which merges into Brahman. So that notion has come from a second source over here. One was Yajnavalkya. This is from this one, Bhagavad Gita. So we have the notion of Ishta Devata. At some point in the Indian philosophical tradition, the Ishta Devata came. Those attributes of Brahman in a desired form. Brahman is too abstract for many of us. It's too abstract. So we wish to see a divinity in a certain form that we wish to emulate. For example, if I'm a dancer, I want to emulate Nataraja. So I'm going to have Nataraja in my studio, and then I'm going to, because I want to emulate those aspects of Nataraja in myself. I want to see that aspect of divinity in myself, right? And then if I'm a learner or a player of music instrument, which I am, so I worship Saraswati, because those are the aspects of purity, the talent, and the truth, nature. That's what I want to see in myself. So I worship Saraswati. And if I'm, for example, a wrestler in a village where is look at his biceps, if I'm a wrestler, then I'm going to emulate Hanuman. Hanuman is what I want, right? So in my studio, I have Hanuman over there, every day worship him, and then I start lifting weights and doing this thing, right? That's what I do. And if I'm a Vaishya, maybe I want to emulate Lakshmi. I want prosperity in my family with riches and other such things. I'm going to pray to her. So what are we saying? Physicians, they worship Dhanvantari, farmers, Bhumi Devi, Varuna, scholars, Saraswati, dancers, Nataraja. So many things. So we see an attribute of divinity that we want to see reflected in ourselves. This is the Ishta Devata or the Saguna Brahman concept comes in over. That is what this is. That's why when people next mock us, saying you have millions of gods, because that's a pedestrian understanding of what Sanatana Dharma is all about. And this is the explanation that we need to provide to them. So this aspiration, is it a milepost in the route or a means to Brahman? What is the destination? This is a loaded question. It's very philosophical. I don't think I'll go there. But we are seeing that in India, we have got different kinds of things, right? We got the Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and so on. We go to temples. Why do we even go to temples? Why bother with temples? We can do puja at home, or you can do meditation at home, or yoga and other such things. So temple, all your senses are saturated with the divinity, right? Your ears are hearing the mantras and the temple bells. Your eyes are seeing the murti, Savana Brahman over there, which is very well decorated. Your nose is smelling the camphor and the agarbatti and the flowers over there, and your nostrils are there, and you're feeling the tension of the energy of the place. You're completely saturated with this energized aspiration goes of Ishta Devata. Puja. If you're doing puja at home, you've got miniatures of all the divinities where you might mimic the hospitality seen in ancient India. In ancient India, people didn't come in Audi cars on well-metal roads to your house. They would come on jet cars. They'll come on bullock cars from one village to the other on muddy roads. And India is a very dusty place, right? So by the time they come to your house, they're full of dust. So as soon as your guest comes, you'll say, welcome, my guest. Please first have a bath and then wear these clean clothes. Then after he's had his bath, then you say, wear these flowers, fragrant flowers, wear some chandanam, which is a sandalwood paste, which is nice smelling and so on. After you've done that, you're going to take your guest and make him feel good, right? So you remember your early days, all the fun you had, you sit and laugh and discuss all those kind of things, entertain in other words. Then you feed him bhojanam. After that, you have some kind of food to eat and so on. And after that, you say it's time to rest, you go ahead and rest. We are mimicking this entirely in our puja. In our puja, first, I remember my mother doing puja, right? She had miniatures of all the deities. First thing, she'd give them a ritual bath. After ritual bath, she'd give them this tiny clothes they'd have, put them on that. Then she'd put the kumkum, she'd put the chandanam on that. Then she starts stotrams, various stotrams, where she's singing the praises of the divinities and putting flowers on that. Then she'd do a divardhana. So before that, a naivedyam. Naivedyam is the offering of food to the divinity. Then you have an arati. Then you say, all right, it's done, you go to sleep. During that time, 20 minutes or half an hour, she's shut her mind to everything. The children are have to go to school. Of course, she's passing all the time differently. I have so many children in the day. Everything is focused on that particular puja. Her mind is fully focused on the puja. It's a way of once again building this mental and spiritual energy towards Brahman in an abstract way, though this through Saguna Brahman, not through Nirguna Brahman. So we are seeing various paths of there, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and so on. And Bhagavan Krishna is saying, filled with faith, that person engages worshipping that form, gets that desired results as dispensed by me alone. And so on. There are many, many verses in Bhagavad Gita that are relevant over here. I'll skip this too technical. And once again, there are many aspects of Prakriti in Samkhya tradition. I will not go here. This is too technical. That's good.
Sankhya is important to go.
Once again,
What I'm saying, Sankhya is important to, I think.
absolutely. So in this whole notion of Prakriti is nature. When we talk about Savana Brahman, it's important to understand what were our ancient Indians' ideas of these things. So let me go back because you asked that particular one. So in the Samkhya tradition, we find 25 tattvas or truths, elements, right? So it starts off with Purusha, this consciousness, becoming unmanifest, Mula Prakriti. This is a balanced state, the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas are balanced. And then we are seeing the expression Mahat or Buddhi or intellect, Ahankara, ego, self, identities, come to the self at this point, where you can have the mind, manas, or the 5 sense of organs, jnanendriyas, or in Rajas, the Sattvic, and the Rajas are the 5 organs of actions, karmendriyas, or in Tamas, the tanmatras, your subtle senses, and the 5 mahabhutas. This is how this described earlier. Eye, ear, nose, skin, hands, feet, sound, touch, form, ether, and so on. So this is the understanding of ancient Indians in Samkhya tradition on how Prakriti or nature has expressed itself as expressed in us and how we interact with the world and so on. And I don't want to go that deep in this talk. We're already running out of time. So one more big trope that students face in classrooms is Hindus are superstitious and backwards. Your Purana stories are silly. Your beliefs are superstitious. When students see this, they have absolutely no way of defending themselves, right? They'll accept that, yeah, we are backward people, superstitious people, that kind of thing. How do you stand your ground? How do you defend your identity here?
I had a question, but we can do later.
Please hold it, please.
About the previous ones.
Okay, we'll get there. So the Purana stories encode wisdom. That's the bottom line. This is a complete contrast, for example, how Machiavelli. He said, there's a meaningless jokes that seas of treacle, seas of butter, astronomy that would have more laughter in the girls in an English boarding school. That is how we describe Indian works, right? As utter nonsense. Talking about Jambudvipa and other things. This is the kind of thing it's talking about. So the bottom line is, there's a failure to unlock the wisdom and the metaphors using Purana stories. That keeps one's understanding at a pedestrian level. Every Purana story is basically a metaphor that encodes some wisdom. I've talked about that at length in many talks on astronomy, on this TEDx talk, on this story science. You are welcome to see some of these talks where I'm talking about that. Every story that you have is encoding a wisdom. If you have the key to unlock that wisdom, the wisdom of the ancients becomes clear. If you don't have the key to unlock that wisdom, it becomes a silly mythology. That means your understanding is pedestrian. That is what it is. So I'll talk a little bit about this a little later. But bottom line, for people who think that Indians are superstitious and so on, we have a clear epistemology in the Indian philosophical systems. For example, Nyaya, all knowledge is not intrinsically valid. Most knowledge is not valid unless proven. Truth exists whether we human beings know it or not. Rishi Akshapada Gautama said that. See how relevant these statements are even today. Even today, you see the relevance of these. They look like so modern understanding of knowledge. But this is our ancient way of encompassing the nature of knowledge. This is what epistemology is. Yoga, we know, Rishi Patanjali, there's Yamas, Niyama, Ashtanga, yoga over here. Then Vaisheshika, Rishi Kanada, works on perception and inference. This is the basis of our scientific understanding of Prakriti, nature. Trying to understand nature, trying to understand that, it is basically Rishi Kanada over here. Samkhya, Rishi Kapila, systematic enumeration and rational examination. That's what I showed you about the 25 tattvas and so on. So Pura Mimamsa, based on reflection, consideration, profound thought, investigation, examination, discussion, Rishi Kumarila Bhatta. Vedanta, there are up to 10 schools. Advaita, Vishishadvaita, I only highlighted Adi Shankara for Advaita, and we got several other kinds of works. Even today, as a scientist, if I were to investigate something new, what do? I go to the library first and I see who has studied that phenomenon. I try to see all the papers or the past papers over there. In other words, I'm making a systematic enumeration of all the facts known about this phenomenon. That's the first thing that I do. Then I have a rational examination, methodology in paper 1, paper 2. What methodology did you follow? What methodology did he follow? That's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going through a period of reflection, consideration, profound thought, my own investigation. Maybe I write a program, maybe I go to the lab and do some experiment, whatever. Examination, discussion with colleagues on the whiteboard and so on. Suddenly I get aha moment. This is what it's all about. And I have some new thoughts or some new truth has come out of that. Which is basically we are following the methods of our ancestors over here. That is perception, inference, systematic elimination. This is the scientific way that we have had. So, this scientific way that we have had. It is not that the British came and told us how to be rational. This is what we have followed. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
What I don't see listed in here, which I think is important in our faith, is intuition. You know, because sometimes revelation appears by itself, spontaneously.
Hold that thought. Yes, hold that thought for one more slide. Two more slides, and I'll come to that. So we have had something called means of knowledge, pramana. So we have had things like pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, and many other things. Pramana over here. And different sampradayas over here only differed in what was elevated as a means for knowledge. What was okay, what was not okay as a means for knowledge, right? So today, for example, I might say if I'm an electrical engineer, I say, okay, this professor from MIT published a theorem in IEEE journal on microwave technology or whatever. And so based upon that Shabda Pramana, I'll write my own PhD thesis, right? What am I doing? I'm hanging on the coattails of some professors saying, he's discovered a truth. Based on that truth, I'm going to have my little truth over here. That's what I'm doing, Shabda Pramana. Similarly, over here, we have all these kind of things. Samkhya, use some things allowed over here. Charvakas, for example, traditional atheists, they said only perception. If I can experience it, that is true. I reject the Vedas, reject everything. That's what they say. Buddhism, only perception inference. Vaisheshika, perception inference. By the time you come to Advaita, it is using just about everything over here. Different sampradayas, Buddhism, Jainism, everything differed only in terms of pramana. What was a pramana that was acceptable and what was not acceptable? There's a tendency today to see them as different religions and so on. That is not at all true. This can be embedded in Indian knowledge systems, and the only differences are what was allowed as knowledge, what is not allowed as knowledge. Okay, why is this important for students to articulate? Your identity can be articulated if you understand what I just talked about. So we are seekers. So the whole goal of life, if you ask one line question to anybody, what is the goal of life? In the Indian tradition, the goal of life always has been, how do I dispel avidya about my existence and understand my true nature? All Indian works have got only that. How do I dispel avidya about my true nature? Wherever you go, you find that kind of thing. And so to dispel avidya, we have got all these pramanas, depending on which sampradaya you're born into in this lifetime, you acquire some amount of knowledge. Maybe by your karma phala, you can only accomplish that much in this lifetime. So the next lifetime, based on our karma phala, we may be closer to spiritual goal or further away. This is what Bhagavan Krishna is promising us. That you'll be closer to spiritual goal or further away from the spiritual goal, based upon your karma. And eventually we will get some knowledge about our true nature. Our does not mean this body, it's the Atman we are referring to here. That will get them. In the Abrahamic tradition, they are followers. They follow a divine dictated law. Some prophet got some law from some archangel Gabriel, or somebody says the son of God or whatever, and they got this kind of knowledge, or somebody made a covenant with God and got some laws and covenants to follow.
And
So
the
they-
same thing with Islam, right?
Yes, Islam is all Abrahamic systems are there.
Yeah.
Islam, Judaism, and Christianity are Abrahamic because they all have a prophet in the tradition. So their understanding is if you follow the divine dictated law to the letter, in your afterlife, you will be admitted to heaven, where you'll have everlasting pleasure or whatever. If you don't, eternal damnation. Forever and ever, you'll be burning and suffering in hell. So the goal of life for them is not knowledge, it is not anything. It is only to follow a divine dictated law. So they use blasphemy to enforce eternal damnation, fears of this nature, and so on. Whereas in the Indian tradition, it is dispel avidya. So the Indian tradition in archaic language, thou shalt seek. That is who we are. And they are thou shalt obey. That is who they are. So if the Indian student who's listening to this or American Indian student listening to this, one way to articulate an identity as Sanatana Dharma followers, we are seekers. We are seekers. We question everything. We question everything. Questioning is not blasphemy. Every Upanishad was a student questioning his guru. So only by questioning we understand the nature of knowledge. Even you know that empirically in your classroom, only if you ask a question in the class, you can have a doubt clear, right? Whereas in this tradition, you cannot question. Questioning is blasphemy. If you question, a shaitan who's tempting you at every exit gate, right? So stay inside, just obey the law. That's all there is. So you should articulate this difference. Then you know who you are as a Sanatana person. Very, very important to understand this. And moving forward, so we got evidence of this all over the place. Once again, Yajnavalkya, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, everybody knows Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. What does it mean? From ignorance lead me to truth, darkness to light. This is a civilization that exalted seeking of truth as the goal of life for more than 5,000 years. This is who we are as a people. Don't let them tell you you're a superstitious lord worshipping monkeys and rats and things of that nature. Reject that. That is the pedestrian understanding of who you are. Be able to articulate the truth with evidence, saying this is who we are, not what you're saying here. So, antiquity of darshanas, I don't want to go deep into this, but we know that Vaisheshika is even prior to 1800 BCE. Regarding Rig Veda Samkhya, I don't even want to go there. So for thousands and thousands of years, our rishis of these various sampradayas have been articulating this epistemological truths that we have been following to the day. So the scientific method, so you asked a question earlier, so that comes over here. So to pursue truth, to sharpen arguments are our civilization's historical goals. That is what we've been doing. If we are pursuing the truth, somebody will say, what about this? What about that? So we have to sharpen our arguments. So every Upanishad, you find a sharpening of arguments and coming closer and closer to what the Tattva is. So in Vaisheshika, we are seeing Pratyaksha and Anumana. Pratyaksha, perception is external and internal. External was arising from senses and world objects. Internal was knowing through the mind, where revelation or intuition, everything also is part of this. But even there were some caveats over there. What is true knowledge and what can be false knowledge? How do you validate that? And Anumana influence was seen as reaching new conclusion and truth from observations of previous truths, applying reason. This is a scientific method. Anybody comes and tells you British taught us how to do science, you can whack them on the head and say, what about Rishi Kananda? In Vaisheshika Sutra. So it's completely over. And we see Vaisheshika's Sutra was echoed by Democritus, who is told to have visited India 400 BCE and went back to Greece with something called, he's called the father of modern science. The West allows self-exaltation. They love that. And he returned with exactly the same Vaisheshika. They'll not talk about this. Too many things to say. So finally, articulate the difference between seekers and followers. Followers are people of the book. They have a book. They call them those people of the book, right? So their unquestioning obedience is expected, else it's blasphemy. We are people of the library. We have got libraries, Dharma Sutras, we got Shastras, we got Samskaras, Mahabharata, Itihasas, Upanishads, Vedas, Aranyakas, Brahmanas. We have got many library works over here. So this is just a way of articulating the difference between these two traditions. All right, this is a good time to stop for lunch. So I hope
I just have one comment.
Yes, please go ahead.
This is really, I enjoyed it so much after listening to you. I feel bad that, there are not more people to listen to you. Lecture.
I feel terrible about that also. I watch every time and there is some.
And what I was thinking, the last few days I've been watching cricket, and the people, of course, millions of people watching. I was thinking maybe you should give a lecture in some big stadium. People need this.
There's an anecdote about a very famous Swamiji, Acharya Swamiji, in the 70s and 80s in India. He once walked out of a hall where he's invited for a talk because there were some things that are not up to the mark for him. So he said, our tradition has always honored scholars, always respected scholarship. So we should make that. But I'm not a speaker, so I will not walk out. I will talk on the small audience, but eventually we need to make an effort. Each one of us over here, how could we have got more people over here?
Absolutely.
Maybe you can be ambassadors of this talk and make more people see this in the
When
future.
you come next time, there will be.
So I hear
there
that all
will
the
be
time.
much bigger.
I hear that all the time. That doesn't happen. I can't get a discount saying that.
Just as a
So-
30
About why we. Who is Dr. Raj Vedam? I make it very dramatic, right? And what is it, right? We'll answer. So first, what we are doing or why we are doing. So few years back onwards, many dignitaries of the emeritus of the SSPD congregation, the founders and others.
Gopal, can you use the mic? They say that they are not able to hear.